So here's the thing about joining an intergalactic military alliance. Nobody tells you about the paperwork, or the committee meetings, or the fact that approximately 70% of your job becomes explaining to alien species why humans do literally anything. I'm Commander Jake Morrison, though everyone calls me Paperwork, because apparently saving one kid from a burning dropship 7 years ago means you get stuck as the human liaison to the Galactic Defense Force forever. Lucky me. My first official council meeting should have been a warning. Picture this: a massive circular chamber floating in neutral space, holographic representatives from 47 member species, all very serious, all very militarily professional. The agenda was standard stuff. Fleet movements, supply lines, rules of engagement, the usual how do we efficiently blow each other up while pretending we're civilized discussion. Then General Throck, a Krellian with 4 arms and the tactical brilliance of a sentient chess computer, brings up battlefield protocols, specifically what to do about non-combatants in active war zones. The standing policy remains unchanged, Throck announced, his translator rendering his clicking mandibles into perfect galactic standard. Juvenile entities located within combat perimeters are classified as acceptable statistical losses. Tactical units will not deviate from mission parameters for retrieval. I waited for someone to laugh. Like this was some kind of dark military humor I wasn't getting. Nobody laughed. "I'm sorry," I said, raising my hand like I was back in school. "Did you just say we leave kids on battlefields?" The Vrelian representative, a floating jellyfish-looking creature named Ambassador Krell, bobbed in what I'd learned meant agreement. "Correct. Our spawn are numerous. Reproduction cycles account for combat losses. Risking trained warriors for immature units demonstrates poor resource management." "Resource management," I repeated slowly. "Indeed," chimed in the Thorgillian delegate, a crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes having an existential crisis. "Our young possess insufficient crystalline density to warrant extraction. They will reform in the planetary matrix regardless." I looked around the chamber. Every single species was nodding, or bobbing, or whatever their anatomy did to signal agreement. The Zentarii representative actually had statistics. "Commander Morrison, retrieval operations for juveniles result in a 17% increase in casualties among trained personnel. The mathematics are quite clear." "The mathematics," I said. "Yes, simple cost-benefit analysis." I must have made a face. You know the face. The face that says, "I'm processing information I really wish I wasn't processing." Because suddenly every holographic eye equivalent in the chamber was focused on me. "Is there a problem, Commander?" Throck asked. No problem," I said, my voice climbing about 3 octaves higher than normal, just wrapping my head around the fact that the entire Galactic Defense Force has an official policy that boils down to, screw them kids. You could have heard a pin drop. In space. Through a vacuum. "Commander Morrison," Throck said carefully, "emotion-based decision-making leads to tactical inefficiency." "Right. Tactical inefficiency. Got it." I pulled up my datapad, fingers moving on autopilot. Just making a note here. Galactic Council thinks saving children is tactically inefficient. I'm sure that'll look great in my report to Earth Command. "Your species will adapt to galactic norms," the Zentarii delegate said, with what I swear was condescension. "You are simply new." The meeting moved on. Fleet deployments, weapons testing protocols, standard military nonsense, but I couldn't focus on any of it. I just kept thinking about that phrase. Acceptable losses. Statistical casualties. Non-essential personnel. They were talking about kids. After the meeting, I sent my report back to Earth Command. I tried to keep it professional, I really did, but my final line was, "Recommend immediate review of Alliance participation because apparently everyone out here thinks leaving children to die is a totally normal Tuesday." 3 hours later, my report had been leaked to every human military channel. 6 hours after that, it was on civilian networks. By the next morning, my horrified face during that council meeting had been turned into 47 different memes across human social media. My personal favorite was the one with the caption, "TFW, you realize your alien allies are actually monsters." Yeah, that about summed it up. What I didn't know then, sitting in my quarters staring at those memes, was that humanity was about to collectively lose its mind. And when humanity loses its mind about something, we don't just complain. We build protocols, we write manuals, we create entire military branches dedicated to solving the problem. Because apparently, we're the only species in the galaxy who looked at acceptable losses and said no thanks, we'll pass on the whole child abandonment thing. Who knew that would be controversial? So, turns out, the universe has a sick sense of humor. Because exactly 3 weeks after that council meeting, my squad got deployed to Kepler 442b, a contested mining world where the Zentarii and the Korvax had decided to have a very enthusiastic disagreement about resource rights. Our mission was simple: secure the northern processing facility, establish a defensive perimeter, and wait for the big brains at command to negotiate a ceasefire. Easy. Routine. The kind of operation where the most exciting thing that happens is someone finding expired ration packs from 2187. Except the Korvax decided to shell the civilian quarter at 600 hours, because apparently war crimes are just suggestions when you're a species of honor-obsessed lizard warriors. We were pinned down in a crater about 2 clicks from our objective when Corporal Amy Rodriguez, our medic and the person most likely to fight you over proper bandage application technique, suddenly froze mid-reload. "Commander," she said quietly. 3 o'clock, in the rubble. I looked. At first I didn't see anything except smoking debris and the kind of destruction that makes you wonder why anyone bothers with diplomacy. Then something moved. Something small. "Contact?" I asked, bringing up my rifle. "Negative," Rodriguez said. "Children." And there they were, 7 of them huddled together in what used to be a storage building. I could see at least 3 different species, a couple of Vrelian spawn, their tentacles wrapped around each other, what looked like a Thorgelian juvenile, barely knee-high. Some others I couldn't immediately identify because xenobiology wasn't my specialty, and also because they were covered in dust and absolutely terrified. I opened comms. "Overlord, this is Ground Team 7. We have visual on multiple juvenile non-combatants in Sector 49er, requesting guidance." General Thruck's voice came back, calm and collected as always. "Acknowledged, Ground Team 7. Maintain current position. Non-combatants are not mission relevant." "Sir, they're children." "Correct. They are not mission relevant. Continue to objective." I looked at Rodriguez. She was staring at me with an expression I'd seen before. It was the same look she'd had right before she'd punched a supply officer who'd tried to skip wounded soldiers in triage because they were probably not going to make it anyway. "Commander," she said, her voice very level, "I didn't join the military to leave kids in a war zone." Private Chen, our demolitions expert and the squad member most likely to accidentally blow something up while making breakfast, nodded. "Yeah, that's going to be a hard pass for me too, sir." I looked around at my squad. 8 humans. All of them staring at those kids. All of them waiting for me to make the call. Here's the thing about command. Sometimes the right decision and the legal decision aren't the same thing. And sometimes you have to pick which kind of officer you want to be. "Ground Team 7 to Overlord," I said. "Experiencing communication difficulties. Breaking to address equipment malfunction." He closed the comm before Throck could respond. "Rodriguez, Chen, you're with me. Everyone else, cover fire. We're going shopping." "Shopping, sir?" Chen asked. "Yeah. Shopping for kids. Let's move." What followed was probably the most chaotic 30 seconds of my career. We sprinted across open ground while the Korvax helpfully reminded us that they had working artillery. Rodriguez reached the kids first, her medic instincts overriding literally everything, including self-preservation. Hey, it's okay," she was saying, her translator working overtime. "We're here to help. Nobody's getting left behind." One of the Vrelian spawn made a noise like a scared dolphin. The Thorgelian kid just stared at us with wide, crystalline eyes. "Commander, we've got incoming," Chin shouted, setting up a portable shield generator that was definitely not rated for the amount of fire we were taking. "Would love to not die doing this good deed." Rodriguez was already doing triage, her hands moving fast. "This one's got a broken appendage, this one's in shock. Commander, they're all malnourished. How long have they been out here?" "Ask them later. Right now we need to move." Getting 7 traumatized alien children across a war zone while under fire is not covered in any training manual. Rodriguez ended up carrying 2. Chen had one on his back while trying to return fire. I had a Vrelian spawn wrapped around my neck like the world's most terrified scarf. We made it back to our lines through what I can only describe as pure spite and the universe deciding we'd already had enough of a bad day. When we stumbled into our forward operating base, covered in dust and clutching 7 very confused alien children, you could have heard a pin drop. General Throck was waiting. All 4 of his arms were crossed. "This is the Krellian equivalent of your mom finding out you took the car without permission." "Commander Morrison, he said slowly. You directly violated orders. Yes, sir. You endangered your entire squad. Yes, sir. For non-essential personnel. I looked down at the Vrelian spawn still clinging to my armor. Its big, scared eyes were looking up at me like I was the first safe thing it had seen in days. No, sir, I said, for kids. Throck stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away, muttering something in Krellian that my translator helpfully rendered as illogical, emotional humans. The human section of the base, though? They erupted in cheers. Someone started clapping. Within minutes, every human soldier in the facility knew what we'd done. I expected a court-martial. What I got was a medal nomination, and my face plastered across every human military network with the caption, Commander Morrison and his squad rescue 7 alien children against direct orders. Humanity, it turns out, loves this stuff. The Galactic Council, not so much. 3 days later, I was formally charged with insubordination, reckless endangerment, and violation of established combat protocols. Turns out, saving kids is controversial when you're the only species who thinks it's worth doing. The court-martial was held on Orbital Station Kepler, a neutral facility that looked like someone had taken every species' idea of imposing architecture and smashed them together into one deeply confusing space station. I was escorted to the tribunal chamber by 2 very polite Zentarii guards, who kept asking me if humans really ate something called pizza, and if it was true we'd go to war over the correct way to prepare it. That's more of a civil disagreement, I told them, usually non-lethal. Fascinating, one of them said, making notes on a datapad. Your species is very confusing. The tribunal was exactly what you'd expect. A long bench with representatives from 5 different species, all of them looking at me like I was a particularly interesting bacteria sample. General Throck was there as the primary witness. The prosecution was being handled by a Vrelian legal specialist named Advocate Shrell, who had approximately 40 tentacles and the personality of a tax auditor. Commander Morrison, Shrell began, his voice translated into monotone perfection. You stand accused of willful insubordination, endangerment of military assets, and violation of Galactic Defense Force Protocol 774 regarding non-essential personnel extraction. How do you plead? Guilty on all counts, I said. That caused a stir. Apparently, they expected me to argue. You admit to these violations? The lead arbiter asked. She was a Thorgalian, her crystalline form refracting light in a way that was honestly pretty distracting. Absolutely. I violated direct orders. I endangered my squad. And I absolutely broke Protocol 774, which is a garbage protocol written by people who apparently skipped the day in basic ethics where they teach you not to leave children to die. The chamber went dead silent. Commander Morrison, Shrell said carefully, your emotional response is noted, but irrelevant to... Irrelevant? 7 kids are alive, because my squad did the right thing. How is that irrelevant? Because the right thing, as you phrase it, is not the tactically sound thing. Throck interjected, his forearms gesturing in what I'd learned was the Krellian version of a shrug. You risked 8 trained soldiers for 7 immature non-combatants of species that reproduce rapidly enough to offset such losses. Yeah, I did. You know why? Because we don't calculate whether kids are worth saving. We just save them. Call me crazy, but back on Earth we have this wild concept called basic human decency. You are not on Earth, Commander. No kidding. I noticed that when I joined a military alliance, where child abandonment is official policy. I should probably mention that this entire trial was being broadcast, live, across every human colony and military installation in Allied space, because someone in Earth Command's Public Affairs Office had decided that transparency was important. Or maybe they just wanted to watch the Galactic Council squirm. Either way, my testimony was going out to approximately 8 billion humans in real time. Commander Morrison, the lead arbiter said, trying to regain control. The Galactic Defense Force operates on principles of efficiency and resource optimization. Personal feelings cannot dictate military strategy. Right. Efficiency. That's what we're calling it. I leaned forward. Here's my personal feeling. If your military strategy requires abandoning kids on battlefields, your strategy sucks. We don't do that. We won't do that. And if that makes us tactically inefficient, then I guess humanity's just gonna have to be inefficient. The arbiter opened her mouth to respond, but suddenly the chamber's communication system activated. A holographic projection appeared, and I recognized the uniform immediately. Admiral Patricia O'Brien, commander of the Earth Defense Force's 3rd Fleet. She was 73 years old, had fought in 4 major conflicts, and had a reputation for not suffering fools. At all. Ever. "This is Admiral O'Brien for Earth Command," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that makes generals stand up straighter. "I'm interrupting these proceedings to deliver an official statement." The arbiters looked at each other confused. This apparently wasn't protocol. "Earth Command has reviewed the incident on Kepler 442b, O'Brien continued. "Commander Morrison and his squad acted in accordance with human military values and the basic principles of humanitarian conduct. We not only support their actions, we're formally commending them." "Admiral," the lead arbiter said, "this tribunal is a Galactic Defense Force proceeding. Earth Command cannot simply—" "We can, and we are. Furthermore, Earth Command is hereby drafting a new protocol for the protection and extraction of juvenile non-combatants in active war zones. We're calling it the No Child Left Behind Protocol. Catchy, right? Marketing loved it." I had to physically bite my tongue to keep from laughing. They really named it that. They really did. "This is highly irregular," Sherl protested, his tentacles waving in agitation. "You cannot unilaterally establish protocols that contradict existing Galactic Defense Force policy." "Watch us," O'Brien said flatly. "The protocol is being distributed to all human military units, effective immediately. Any Allied forces are welcome to adopt it. Or not. We frankly don't care." Throck stood, all forearms raised. "Admiral O'Brien, this sets a dangerous precedent. If every species begins operating on emotional imperatives rather than tactical logic, then maybe we'll stop leaving kids to die, General." "I know. Terrifying concept." The feed cut. Just like that. O'Brien had dropped her statement and disconnected, leaving the tribunal chamber in absolute chaos. The arbiters were arguing with each other. Shrell was frantically checking legal databases. Throck looked like he'd just been hit with a tactical nuke made of bureaucracy. I just sat there, trying not to grin. The tribunal eventually found me guilty because technically I had violated orders, but the sentence was a formal reprimand and 2 weeks of death duty, which was basically the galactic legal system's way of saying, "We have to punish you, but we really don't want to." Outside the chamber, Rodriguez was waiting with the rest of my squad. "So," she said, "we're getting our own protocol?" "Apparently. The No Child Left Behind protocol, with training programs and specialized equipment and everything." Chen laughed. "Earth Command's really doing this?" "Humanity's really doing this," I corrected, "because apparently we're the only species in the galaxy who thinks kids are worth the effort." "The other species think we're insane," Rodriguez said. "Yeah," I agreed, "they probably do." 3 weeks later, the first NCLB training manual arrived. It was 400 pages long and included sections on cross-species juvenile identification, trauma response for 17 different alien physiologies, and tactical extraction procedures. The cover had a picture of a human soldier carrying an alien child to safety. The caption read, "Because some things are more important than efficiency." Humanity had officially decided that saving kids was our brand now. The galaxy was just going to have to deal with it. The No Child Left Behind protocol's first official field test happened exactly 6 weeks after my court-martial, on a mining colony called Sigma-7. The colony was caught in a border dispute between the Vrelians and some mercenary group with more weapons than sense, and naturally, someone had to go stabilize the situation before it turned into a full-scale war. That someone was my newly reorganized unit, now officially designated as Specialized Extraction and Protection Squad 14. Unofficially, everyone called us the Babysitters Club. Everyone. Even our own command structure. "Ground Team Babysitter, you are cleared for landing," the station controller said when we approached Sigma-7. I could hear him trying not to laugh. "Copy that, Control," I replied, because arguing about call signs was a battle I'd already lost. "Babysitters inbound." Rodriguez, sitting across from me in the dropship, was reading through the NCLB manual for probably the 50th time. "Did you know there's an entire chapter on proper nutritional requirements for Korvax hatchlings? Apparently they need live prey, or they get developmental issues." "Great," Chen said from his seat. "So we're supposed to carry what? Mice? Do space mice exist?" "The manual suggests pre-packaged synthetic alternatives," Rodriguez said, flipping pages, "which sounds way less disturbing." We touched down in the colony's main spaceport, which had seen better days. Like, better decades. The whole place looked like someone had decided structural integrity was optional. Our liaison was a Vrelian administrator named Krell. Yes, the same Krell whose kid we'd saved on Kepler 442b. He'd requested human assistance specifically, which had caused approximately 7 diplomatic incidents because apparently asking humans for help was becoming a trend his government didn't appreciate. Commander Morrison, Krell said, his translator making his water-based communications sound like a formal greeting. Thank you for responding. The situation is complicated. Complicated how? There are approximately 47 juveniles in the contested sector, multiple species. The mercenaries are using the civilian areas as cover, and official Galactic Defense Force policy states to allow him that we should leave them there and call it acceptable losses, I finished. Yeah, we're familiar with the policy. That's why we're here. Krell's tentacles did this rippling thing that I'd learned meant relief. My government will not acknowledge this publicly, but privately many of us are grateful that humans are, as you are, emotionally compromised and tactically inefficient. I was going to say decent, but your phrasing also works. The extraction itself was textbook. Well, textbook according to the manual that humanity had literally just written. We used thermal imaging to locate the juveniles, set up a secure corridor, and had them out in under 20 minutes. No casualties. Not even any injuries, unless you counted Chen accidentally stepping on his own foot while carrying a Thorgellian kid who kept trying to eat his helmet. 47 kids extracted, all alive, all safe. We shipped them to the secure facility that Earth Command had established specifically for situations like this, because apparently we were now running an intergalactic daycare service in addition to fighting wars. The after-action report was filed. The mission was classified as a success, and then the Galactic Council meeting happened. I wasn't physically present this time, thank God, but the whole thing was recorded and I watched it later, with popcorn, because I'm a glutton for punishment. General Thrak stood before the council, all 4 arms gesturing as he spoke. The human protocol is inefficient. They diverted resources, extended operation time by 43%, and exposed their personnel to unnecessary risk. All for juveniles that statistical models indicate have a 67% survival probability even without intervention. 67%, I said to my empty quarters, throwing popcorn at the screen. Oh well, if it's only a third of them dying, that's totally fine. The Zentari delegate chimed in, their crystalline form shimmering with what I'd learned was disapproval. Humans are allowing emotion to override tactical judgment. This sets a dangerous precedent. Next, they will be rescuing adults, then enemy combatants. Where does it end? Maybe with everyone alive? I suggested to the recording, just spitballing here. But here's the thing that got me. After all the speeches about efficiency and logic and proper resource allocation, Ambassador Krell stood up, the same Vrelian whose government had criticized humanity's emotional decision-making for months. I must note, Krell said carefully, that my offspring was among those rescued on Kepler 442b by Commander Morrison's team, against orders, against protocol, at significant personal risk. The chamber went quiet. My government's official position is that such actions are tactically unsound, Krell continued. But I am not speaking as a government representative right now. I am speaking as a parent. My child is alive because humans decided that acceptable losses was not acceptable, and I notice that many representatives in this chamber are now privately requesting human proximity during conflicts in their sectors. We mock them publicly while relying on their emotional compromising privately. He paused, his tentacles curling in what I'd learned was the Vrelian equivalent of a shrug. Perhaps we are the ones who are tactically unsound. The meeting devolved into chaos after that. Some delegates argued. Others quietly started submitting requests for NCLB training materials. A few species officially condemned the protocol, while unofficially asking Earth Command how quickly they could get human units deployed to their territories. Within a month, we had 17 alien soldiers volunteer for cross-training with the Babysitters Club. Not because their governments approved, because they'd seen what we were doing and decided it was worth learning. Thrak never officially changed his position, but I noticed that his tactical deployment started including civilian protection corridors in the mission parameters. He never called it the NCLB protocol. He called it Optimized Resource Preservation Strategy. Potato. Rodriguez summed it up best during our next briefing. So we're still the emotional humans who don't understand proper military efficiency. Yep, I confirmed. But now everyone secretly wants us around because we're the only ones who'll save their kids. Also, yep. And we got an official protocol, specialized training, and dedicated equipment for this. Triple yep. She grinned. I love humanity sometimes. Sometimes. Hey, we also invented nuclear weapons and reality TV. We're a mixed bag. Fair point. The Babysitters Club was officially operational. The galaxy was officially confused about whether to mock us or thank us. And somewhere in the universe, there were kids who were alive specifically because humanity had looked at military efficiency and said, "Nah, we're good." We were about to learn that things were going to get a lot more complicated. But for now, we had a protocol, a mission, and approximately 47 alien parents who would never publicly acknowledge that humans had saved their children, but who privately sent thank you messages that made Rodriguez cry every single time. Humanity was doing its thing. The galaxy would just have to keep up. Clendathu Prime was supposed to be a diplomatic resolution, peace talks, negotiated settlements, all the stuff that happens when civilized species decide shooting at each other is getting expensive. Instead, it turned into the worst-case scenario that military planners have nightmares about. Someone, and I'm still not sure who, decided to shell the planet's primary civilian evacuation center during the ceasefire negotiations. Thousands of mixed-species families were sheltering there. When the bombardment started, the adults evacuated to their respective military zones. They left the kids behind, all of them. Every single species followed protocol and abandoned approximately 2,847 juveniles in an active war zone that was about to become a crater. The Galactic Defense Force's official response? Start drawing up planetary bombardment plans and count the juveniles as acceptable losses. Earth Command's response? 3 words that made every human military unit in the sector scramble. Operation Every Single One. I got the call at 400 hours. Admiral O'Brien herself looking like she'd aged 5 years in the last 24 hours. Morrison, we're launching the largest unauthorized rescue operation in human military history. You in? Do I have a choice? Not really. We're doing this with or without official sanction. I'd prefer my best extraction specialist leading it. How many ships do we have? Officially, none. Unofficially, every human vessel in the sector just experienced sudden catastrophic navigation errors that are causing them to drift toward Clendathu Prime. Funny how that happens. Within 6 hours, we had 43 human ships in orbit. Within 12 hours, we had volunteers from 17 other species who'd quietly decided that maybe humanity had a point about the whole child abandonment thing. Even had a few Krellians, including one of Throck's junior officers who straight up told his commander he was taking personal leave and there was nothing Throck could do about it. The extraction was chaos. Beautiful, organized chaos. We divided the civilian center into sectors, assigned teams to each one, and went in with every piece of equipment humanity had developed for the NCLB protocol, plus a few things we'd invented on the spot. Rodriguez was everywhere at once, treating injuries while coordinating medical teams across 7 species. Chen was running demolitions to clear rubble while somehow carrying 3 Vrelian spawn on his back. I was coordinating from the command ship and simultaneously leading a ground team because multitasking is what coffee was invented for. The Korvax were still shelling the area. We were taking fire from 3 different mercenary groups. The planetary government was threatening to shoot us down for violating their airspace, and we just kept pulling kids out of the rubble. 2,847 juveniles. We extracted every single one. 0 juvenile casualties, 47 humans injured, 3 seriously. Chen lost a finger to shrapnel but refused medical evacuation until his sector was clear because apparently that's the kind of stubborn we're working with. Rodriguez ended up in a firefight while carrying 2 injured Thorgelian kids and a Zentari juvenile, and according to witnesses she was simultaneously returning fire and performing trauma care. Someone got it on video. It went viral across 83 star systems. When we finally cleared the planet, the Galactic Council was waiting with approximately 700 criminal charges and enough diplomatic incidents to keep lawyers employed for decades. Admiral O'Brien's response was broadcast across every communication channel in Allied space. The Galactic Defense Force had the resources to save those children and chose not to. Humanity chose differently. Court-martial us if you want, we'll do it again. The council chambers erupted. Half the delegates were calling for sanctions. The other half were, very quietly, not making eye contact, because their own citizens were currently flooding their governments with messages asking why humans cared more about their children than they did. Public opinion shifted fast. Turns out most species might have cold tactical logic in their military doctrine, but individual parents get really upset when you tell them their kids are acceptable losses. Who knew? 6 months later, the NCLB protocol became mandatory Galactic Defense Force policy. They renamed it to Juvenile Protection and Extraction Directive because apparently the original name was too human. But everyone still called it No Child Left Behind because that's what it was. The Babysitters Club became an official multi-species branch. Voluntary enrollment only. We had more applicants than positions within 3 weeks. General Throck, in the most awkward diplomatic statement I've ever witnessed, admitted that humanity had identified a previously unrecognized tactical oversight in standard military doctrine. That's Krellian for you were right and we were wrong, by the way. My quarters are now covered in photos from alien families, hundreds of them, thank you messages in 47 different languages, kids who are alive because humanity looked at acceptable losses and said no. And here's the funny part. Now we have the opposite problem. Human troops keep finding abandoned juveniles in non-combat zones. Somehow, mysteriously, every human patrol just happens to stumble across kids who need help. It's become our thing. Command keeps sending me memos about mission creep and unauthorized expansions of operational parameters. I file them under things I'll worry about. Never. Because apparently humanity decided that if we're going to be part of a galactic civilization, we're going to drag everyone else toward basic decency whether they like it or not. Command says we're creating a culture of excessive empathy in the galactic military. Good. Maybe they'll stop shooting at each other long enough to notice they all have kids worth saving. 6 months after Klendathu Prime, I'm back at my desk doing what I do best. Paperwork. The Juvenile Protection and Extraction Directive, which absolutely everyone still calls the No Child Left Behind Protocol because the universe has a sense of humor, is now standard operating procedure across all Galactic Defense Force operations. Every species, every conflict, no exceptions. The Babysitters Club is now officially the Juvenile Extraction and Protection Corps, or JEPSI, which somehow sounds even less dignified than our nickname. We've got 347 active members from 22 different species. Voluntary enrollment only. Waitlist is currently at 800. Rodriguez got promoted to lieutenant and now runs the training program. Chen got a new finger, courtesy of human medical tech, and immediately used it to flip off a Zentarii delegate who suggested the protocol was resource-intensive. The delegate filed a complaint. Chen filed it in his trophy drawer. General Throck still won't admit that humans were right, but his tactical briefings now include mandatory juvenile safety assessments. He calls it comprehensive resource management. We call it progress. Ambassador Krell's government still hasn't publicly thanked humanity for saving Vrelian spawn. But Krell himself visits Earth twice a year and always brings his kid, who's now 7 and wants to join the human military when they grow up. Krell's government is pretending not to notice. The best part? The unintended consequences. Human patrols have developed this amazing ability to accidentally discover abandoned juveniles in literally every situation. Routine supply run? Found 3 kids. Diplomatic escort mission? Whoops, there's a whole orphanage that needs relocating. Training exercise? Somehow stumbled across juveniles from a species we've never even made contact with before. Command keeps sending me increasingly frustrated memos about mission parameter adherence and unauthorized humanitarian operations. Last week's memo literally said, and I quote, "Commander Morrison, your units cannot keep finding children in every sector of space. The statistical probability is astronomically low." I sent back a one-line response. Life finds a way. Admiral O'Brien loved it. The compliance office did not. My office walls are covered now, not with commendations or military awards, though I have those too, with photos, hundreds of them. Alien kids with human soldiers, thank you notes in languages I can't read, drawings from Thorgalian younglings showing humans as big crystalline heroes, a video message from a Korvax hatchling who named their first molt after Rodriguez. Last week, a Zentarii family sent me a mathematical proof. Apparently their kid, who we pulled out of a collapsing building on Sigma 7, grew up to be a quantum physicist. The proof was their way of saying thank you. I don't understand a single equation, but it's framed on my wall anyway. Today's memo from Command is special. It says humanity has created a culture of excessive empathy that is spreading to other species and fundamentally altering the nature of galactic military operations. I print it out, frame it, hang it right next to Admiral O'Brien's original statement from my court-martial. Rodriguez walks in, sees the new frame, and grins. Excessive empathy. They say that like it's a bad thing. Right? Next they'll be complaining that we're making everyone too decent. The horror. She drops a datapad on my desk. New mission brief. Border dispute on Arcturus 9 shouldn't involve civilians. Shouldn't? Yeah, that's what they said last time, too. I look at the brief. Standard peacekeeping operation. No juveniles mentioned anywhere in the documentation. How long do you think before we accidentally find some kids who need help? I ask. I'll set the over-under at 4 hours after landing. I'll take the under. We're both right, of course. We always are. Because here's what the Galactic Council never quite understood. Humanity didn't just create a protocol. We created a standard, a new way of thinking. The idea that some things matter more than tactical efficiency. Other species are catching on, slowly. The Vrelians just announced a new policy about spawn protection. The Thorgelians are developing juvenile evacuation procedures. Even the Korvax, the honor-obsessed warrior species, started including hatchling safety in their military doctrine. They're all pretending they came up with these ideas independently. We're letting them, because ultimately we don't care who gets credit. We care that it's happening. General Throck sent me a message last week. Just 3 words: you were correct. Coming from a Krellian tactical genius who spent months arguing that emotions have no place in military operations, that's basically a Pulitzer Prize. I'm still Commander Jake Paperwork Morrison, still filing reports, still explaining to various alien species why humans do what we do, still getting called babysitter by literally everyone in the military. But now, when I walk through any Galactic Defense Force installation, I see something different. Posters about juvenile safety protocols, training manuals in 47 languages, soldiers from species that used to mock us, now wearing the JEPSEC insignia voluntarily. We changed the galaxy. Not with superior weapons or brilliant tactics or overwhelming force. We changed it by refusing to leave kids behind. Command can call it excessive empathy all they want. The rest of the universe can pretend they always cared about their children. History can record whatever version makes everyone comfortable. But we know the truth. Humanity looked at the galaxy's acceptable losses and said, not acceptable. And somehow, against all odds and tactical logic, the galaxy listened. My datapad buzzes. Another mission brief, another conflict, another opportunity for humanity to accidentally stumble across juveniles who need help. I grab my gear and head for the hangar. Because that's what we do now. That's who we are. The species that decided kids were worth saving even when nobody else would. And honestly, I can't think of a better legacy than that.